we're here. On the line with me from STS, I have Leanne, Emily, and Sydney, and our Melinda. And then IQVIA, we have Joe, Melanie, and Steve. So thanks everybody for joining. We'll go through some STS dates, some updates from STS. I'll hand it over to Joe for the IQVIA updates, and then Melinda's going to touch on a few STS February updates, the FAQs from February. And then if we have time, we'll talk about preparing for harvest close, which closes on the 25th. And then, of course, questions and answers. Here are our important dates for the month of February. We have our webinar today, a user group call on the 16th. Harvest one closes on the 25th with opt-out ending on the 1st. Please make sure you get your data in early and cleaned up early so you can have a relaxing Valentine's Day. Harvest close dates for 2022. Nothing has changed here. I just wanted to re-show this. This is posted on the STS website under the STS National Database page. And just some quick updates from us. Harvest 4 data is back from analysis at IQVIA, and they are preparing for release. And the February training manual is posted. Thank you, Melinda. And now I'm going to hand it over to Joe. Oh, before Joe gets started, we do have some polling questions coming up soon, so make sure you are ready for that. All right, Joe, are you there?
I'm here. It came quicker than I thought. I don't have my document open. Give me a second.
It's okay. Now I'm going to go fast because I was sorry.
No, go ahead. You can go ahead to the next slide. Nope, you're on it already. Great. So the items that I'm going to discuss today are slated for release on the 26th of this month, February 2022. The first one, the first several have to do with the risk-adjusted dashboard report, the analyzed report. First couple here have to do with printing and exporting updates, STS 7715. The export button that exports your full report to a PDF is currently including the anesthesia section, even for those sites who are not enrolled in that component. So we will be fixing that so that sites not participating in anesthesia won't see those pages on their exported report. And then STS 6706, the risk-adjusted report is cutting off the label descriptions when exported to PDF, and we're going to be looking at that and getting that corrected for you as well. STS 7188, these are some calculation updates that are coming to the risk-adjusted report. We did receive some reports of a discrepancy in the denominators for yes and among eligible cases sections of the benchmark report for beta blockers. We did identify the cause of that issue and we'll be implementing a fix on the 26th. STS 7812, the current benchmark reports for operative and post-operative events are not correctly including the version 4.20.2 variable for intra-op blood products platelet dose pack for the 1+ platelet units results. And so that will be added into the logic so that you'll see an update there. STS 6867. We received reports that some sites were seeing incorrect values for missing and yes for the IABP used, radial arteries used, and cardiac referral on their benchmark reports. So that will be corrected.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, next slide.
There you go.
I was checking to see if I was going too fast. So STS 7649, also in regard to the IABP field, an update will be made to properly include the parent field logic for the MEC event assist device variable for version 4.20.2. STS 6928, we are looking into reports that the conduit harvest or cannulation site line on the morbidity mortality benchmark report isn't displaying as expected. So we're looking into that and we'll get that updated and corrected for you. STS 7648, the missing line for intra-op blood products used currently does not include the parent field logic for intra-op blood products refused. So that logic will be implemented in this month's update. And then last one on this page, the On the anesthesia benchmark reports, we did identify an issue with the results for the retrograde autologous priming of CPB circuit line, which will be updating on February 26th. And then one quick item in relation to the participant dashboard, the non-analyzed dashboard report, STS 7159. An update is required for the postoperative events rhythm disturbance requiring permanent device to include the new rhythm dis variable from version 4.20.2 in that calculation. So you'll be able to get those results once this update goes through.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe.
No problem. Usual reminders, if we didn't discuss something you had reported today, we are looking into it. There is a full list of issues, known issues and enhancements available for you within the library that will be updated this week. And then please feel free to reach out to us if you have a ticket under review or have something you've encountered, and we will look into it for you.
Okay. Perfect. And here's our support plan. And now we get to the good stuff. That is the good stuff. Not that IQVIA stuff isn't good stuff, but now we get to the education part of the webinar. And I'm going to hand this over to Melinda to talk through a few of the updates that were put in for the February training manual that's now posted. And we're going to talk about these. And this is when the polling, I have 3 polling questions. They aren't open yet, but they will pop up on your screen when it's time. So Melinda, did you want to go ahead and take these?
Yes. So these are just a couple of updates that I thought you guys might have a few questions about. So I wanted to talk through it on the webinar. So under previous cardiac intervention sequence 655, prior to this update, we had talked in the training manual, it said do not capture aborted or unsuccessful procedures. Well, we've kind of rethought that process, especially since, when you have a TAVR that's gone bad and the patient has to have a SAVR, then we're capturing that TAVR as a prior CV intervention. So the new wording in the training manual as of February states, do not capture aborted or unsuccessful procedures that do not result in urgent/emergent surgical intervention. So for example, if your TAVR is aborted due to an LV injury and you require emergent SAVR, then in this particular scenario, you're going to code the TAVR as a prior CV intervention. The same concept applies to if you're having a Watchman done by a cardiologist and the Watchman goes bad, it's aborted, and you have to repair a LV injury or of something of that nature that needs a cardiac surgery. That procedure was aborted. It resulted in emergent surgical intervention. So you would capture that as a previous cardiac intervention.
Thank you. Okay. Now let's see if you all got that. Here's the polling question. This patient, I just want to know, would you code this as a previous cardiac intervention? A patient had a planned CABG, but following the incision, the surgeon aborted the procedure due to unexpected chest wall adhesions. The patient was discharged home and returned 5 months later with severe chest pain. The surgeon took the patient to surgery emergently and performed a CAB. It took a while to dissect the chest wall adhesions, but it was successful. So is this considered a previous cardiac intervention? The first CABG that was aborted. Ooh, Melinda, it looks like we're going to do a little bit of talking on this one. So I'm letting the poll run. We're getting answers are still coming in, which is great. And
I can't see the answers for some reason. I can't see what's coming in.
Yeah, not yet. Hold on. Here you go. So here are the responses.
Oh, okay, so 77% of the people got this correct. The answer is no. This is not considered a prior CV intervention because it was an aborted procedure. It did not result in an urgent or emergent CABG, okay, or some other cardiac procedure. So this patient went home. He came back 5 months later. So in this particular situation, this would be no to a previous CV intervention because it was an aborted CABG.
Yeah, and they never entered the pericardium in the first procedure, right?
It doesn't, from what you've told us on this slide, no.
That's right. He just opened the chest and it was adhesed, so he stopped. Or she stopped. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop sharing those results. Thank you. And now here's planned versus unplanned.
Okay.
I think I
so-
labeled this wrong, but
It's okay. I can explain it. So this is an update to the training manual. And I get a lot of questions about this because when you are looking at the post-op events section, specifically the 3 that I have listed there. So a revascularization post-op event, the aorta reintervention post-op event, and the re-op other post-op event. And if you read your training manual carefully, it talks about an unplanned procedure. And I get a lot of questions from people wanting to know what that means. And so I've tried to clarify it. So here's the gist of it. Post-op, planned procedures are procedures that are planned pre-op or intra-op during the index procedure. So if you have a procedure done after the index procedure that was not planned, either pre-op or intra-op, then that is an unplanned post-op event. For example, if the patient has to have a pacemaker put in after surgery, or the patient has to have a PCI done after surgery, then these events were not planned pre-op, they were not planned intra-op. There's no documentation that these procedures were going to be done in the post-op event, that they were pre-planned, then those are unplanned procedures, and they will be coded as post-op events. And we have a polling question that highlights that.
okay. So would you code this as a revascularization? And again, this is a post-op event, like Melinda said, that was unplanned. So the patient has post-op progress note. Patient underwent a CABG, has a post-op progress note with chest pain and planned left heart cath with possible PCI in the morning. Patient goes to the cath lab the following morning. They perform the cath and they end up doing a PCI to the native LAD. Is this considered cardiac revascularization? And would you code this as a return to the OR? Can you see the results now, Melinda?
Yes, I can now. Oh, wow. We have to go over this one again.
I'm going to pull this up on the DCF. I think that might be helpful.
Right.
To see it on the DCF here. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. We got pretty good response rate. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So go ahead.
So yeah, we need to go over this again. Okay, and I think if you pull that slide up, that has the question first. Well, we'll start there, and then we'll pull the DCF. So the patient has a post-op progress note that says the patient has chest pain and he has a planned left heart cath. Okay, well, when did they plan that left heart cath? Was it this morning? Was it yesterday morning? Was it, first of all, was it in the post-op period? If it's in the post-op period, then this is not a planned procedure that occurred prior to the index surgery. They may have planned to do the left heart cath in the post-op event section, but that doesn't mean it's planned this doesn't mean it's a planned procedure. In order for it to be planned, you have to have it planned prior to, let's say, your CABG. Okay, so the patient has a CABG, that's your index procedure. Events that are planned prior to that CABG or during that CABG do not count as post-op events. Events that are planned after that index procedure are post-op events. So this patient had a planned heart cath with a possible PCI in the morning. This was in his post-op notes. We probably should have clarified this question a little bit more, because when this question was sent to me, my first question was to, I think that Peter sent this in. My first question to Peter was, when was this planned? Okay. And Peter writes back to me, well, it was planned the day before he had this procedure and he was in the post-op period. So if it's planned in the post-op period, then it is going to be coded as a post-op event because it was not planned prior to the index procedure.
I'm gonna give two examples of what we should look for when coding these. The surgeon's consult says something like patient going for an aortic valve, planned PCI following the aortic valve. Or, and if that were to happen, if that surgeon said that in the preoperative period and it's in their consult and it says the patient is going to have something planned after their index procedure that's being collected in the database, then that is going to be considered not as a re-op event, not as a post-op event for reoperation or revascularization. The same thing, let's say the patient goes to the OR and has an aortic valve procedure performed. And during the operation, they shoot the coronaries for some reason, and the patient is found to have a tight left main or a tight LAD. Let's just say a tight LAD. The surgeon's going to replace the aortic valve, and then in the operative note, it'll say that the patient has 90% LAD, planned, discussed with cardiology, patient will go to the cath lab on post-op day 1 or something like that, where it's planned before the patient leaves the OR. The other part of that is the patient leaves the OR and then they decide they're going to do something different to the patient or something in addition to what was done after the patient leaves the OR. It's not in the operative notes anywhere. It's not in the preoperative consults anywhere. Those are the things that count as post-operative events, as return to OR, return for vascularization, return for valvular function, or any of those reoperative codes. So hopefully that helps. Anything else, Melinda?
No, those are some great examples. I think that sometimes people get caught up with the semantics and the wording, but I think the most important thing to remember is if whatever procedure is done, whatever operative procedure that's done post-op, if it was not planned pre-op or intra-op, then that's a post-op event. That's the key here.
Okay. Next one. This one's going to be a doozy, so pay attention, everybody.
Yeah, so thanks to Allie for bringing this up. So Allie asked me a question about readmitted patients, and she wanted to know if patients that were readmitted and then transferred to a higher level of care should be followed for procedures that may occur at that other facility. And I had to think long and hard on this, and we discussed it with leadership. And the decision we came up with is that yes, we should be following these patients with respect to the most invasive procedure performed during the readmit. So readmitted patients that are transferred to another acute care hospital should be followed until discharge from that facility to document the most invasive procedure performed during the readmit. And the reason I think the decision went this way is, for example, let's say that your patient, a patient got readmitted to your hospital, and for some reason, they had something such as it looked like a sternal infection, but it wasn't sure. And then they thought the patient was pretty sick. So they sent him to a hospital with a higher level of care. And at the hospital with a higher level of care, they decided that this patient had a very bad deep sternal wound infection and he had to have surgery and such and such. So in order to not miss that particular procedure for the deep sternal wound, you would have to follow the patient at the other facility. And so the only thing you have to follow is the most invasive procedure that was performed. It's not like when you transfer them now in the database and you have to get, blood work and vent times and labs and all that. The only thing you're looking for is what was the most invasive procedure. So if they had a reoperation for an aortic dissection, or they had a reoperation for a deep sternal wound, or whatever, we just want to be able to accurately reflect those items in the database. Carol, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think you covered that great. I think the only thing I would just state again is the readmit period is not just the first hospital they're readmitted to. Like Melinda said, the patient came in but to one hospital, they were readmitted and then transferred to a higher level of care. Follow that patient throughout the entire acute care hospital stay as a readmission. So I think you covered it well, Melinda. We have a polling question. This one's a little tricky, and it's going to be a two-part question. So here's the situation. I want to know how you're going to code this. A patient status post-CABG times 3 is 10 days post-op. The patient is seen as an outpatient by the cardiologist when they complain of abdominal and back pain. The cardiologist sends the patient to the local community hospital for a stat CT. This CT shows an evolving type A dissection. The patient was waiting for the results and is stable, but in pain, so they decided to admit the patient with the intent to transfer to a tertiary facility where the original procedure was performed. So you're coming back to they were readmitted at one hospital, coming back to your hospital. The patient is transferred and undergoes an aortic dissection repair. So how are you going to code this? And here are the options. This is a readmit, but since there was no procedure done at the readmitting hospital, I do not need to code the aortic dissection repair as a readmit procedure. The second option is the patient was readmitted to a different facility, so I do not need to capture this as a readmission. And the third option is this is a readmission, and although the patient was transferred, I still need to capture the procedure that was performed. Ooh, you did. I think we're doing good on this one.
Hey.
Look at you guys. Okay. Are you happy with that? Everybody
Great job. Great job.
Okay, so here are the results. And everybody except for all but 3 people got it right. Go ahead, Melinda. And do you want to add anything?
Well, this is definitely a readmission. Okay. And you want to capture the dissection repair. That was the most invasive procedure done during the readmission period. And in addition to that, you're also going to
wait.
What?
Don't say it.
What? Oh, you got one other caption?
I got another question.
Oh God, I was about ready to blow.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
you all got it right, that this is a readmission, and you're going to capture. I'm going to pull up the DCF real quick just so I can show. You're going to capture the readmission on the first procedure. So
7165 or
Thank you.
thereabouts.
Whoa, scrolled right past it. All right, so that patient definitely, this is your DCF for that first CABG that was done 10 or so days ago. It definitely is a readmission. You're going to click that here. You're probably going to click maybe aortic complication, would you say, Melinda, since we know that it's a dissection and an evolving type A? Yep, I would code it. And then you're going to also code the readmit primary procedure as OR for aorta intervention. So that's how you're going to code that. Now, what are we going to do? What about the aorta? What are we going to do with that aorta procedure that was performed? It's being performed at your hospital because that patient was transferred to your hospital on their readmission. So what are we going to do with that aorta procedure? Are you going to code the first choice is I do not code the aorta procedure at all. I only capture the aorta procedure done at readmission. As a readmission, I will capture the aorta procedure as a readmit procedure, and I will code the aorta procedure as a new procedure on a new DCF. So let's see how we do with this one. Or I don't know, please help me. This is like a 2-4 polling question. Oh, we're getting a little divided. Okay, get your answers in. So now I'm going to stop the end of polling here. I think that we have a pretty fair representation.
Most people got the right answer. I will capture the aorta procedure as a readmit procedure, and I will start a new data collection form for the aortic dissection repair. So that is the answer, because a couple things. It is a readmit. You have to capture the readmit for the first procedure, and you also have to capture the procedure that was done during the readmit. Now you have a whole new aortic dissection repair. That also is an index procedure. It must be entered. So you're going to have to start a new data collection form for that particular procedure and then complete it and follow it just as you would any other index procedure that you enter into your database.
Very good. And good job to those people that got it right. And to the people who didn't get it right, hopefully you have a better understanding of that now. So that's all we have. I hope that was fun. I really like polling questions. So, and I think I asked y'all before and you too. Maybe what we should do, Melinda, is go through the Q&A now, the questions and answers now, and see well, I guess we can take a vote, maybe in the chat box. Q&A now, or do we need to do a review of harvest close, how to do the harvest close again with using the different, okay, Jen Miller saying Q&A. Let it go for a few minutes. I wish I could do like an automatic poll.
Looks like, are there people that have their hands raised too? I can't see.
Oh, let's see. Jennifer Cook does. We can allow, let's see, Jennifer. Oh, hold on. Nope, never mind, Jennifer. Okay, let's do the Q&A and we'll see how fast we can get through that. And then we'll do a harvest close. I'll try the harvest close before we end. We can stay on a little bit longer if needed to cover that. But we do have a half an hour, so hopefully we'll be good. All right, first question. This is a good one. This is from Vicky, and it says, when a case is proctored, what surgeon do we put on the new put down on the data collection form? The new surgeons or the proctoring one? And well, first, it depends. Are both surgeons listed on your Schedule A? If both surgeons are listed on your Schedule A, then you're going to put down the primary surgeon, which in this case, it seems like that would be the one who's being proctored, which is the new surgeon. If the new surgeon is the only one on your Scheduled A, then I would probably put the new surgeon as the performing surgeon.
Yeah, and well, at times you can tell by the op note too. So like who is listed as the main surgeon. So if they're both on your participant agreement and one of them says main surgeon and the other says co-surgeon, well, of course, you're going to put the main surgeon down. So you might get a clue on the op note too. But the real key is, are both of them on the participant agreement? Because they have to be on the participant agreement to be a surgeon of reference in the database.
That's right. Okay. Thanks, Melinda. Next question is, this is from Janet, and I can take this one. Most post-op complications in the dashboard, the denominator is the number of patients who experienced a complication would it be more accurate to see how many patients in each risk population experienced each complication? So both ways are accurate to display it. DCRI had always displayed the complications using the number of patients who experienced the complication as the denominator. We are looking to provide both ways, report out both ways. One over the entire population of your isolated isolated CABG procedures using the total N. And then the other way is the way we're currently reporting it out, which is the number of patients who experienced a complication. So both ways are correct. And we are working with IQVIA to add in that extra column. Sequence 805, does a previous Impella placement is a previous Impella placement considered a previous cardiac intervention?
Only if it is an open one, transaxillary or transaortic placement. That's in the training manual, and it's coded under other cardiac intervention. So if you're just putting like a transcatheter impella in or femoral impella, no, those are not captured. But if you are actually doing an open procedure and transaxillary or transaortic, yes, those would be captured.
Thank you. This goes back to this is Donna's question. This goes back to the patient who had their chest open, but there was too many adhesions. So the surgeon decided to close it up. Patient came back a few months later and ended up with an emergent CABG. And she's saying, would it still be a first re-op since the chest was previously opened? And
well, only if the pericardial space had been entered, and it wasn't entered in that example that I could see, because incidence is determined by incidence in a space. So when you're doing a CABG, you go into the pericardial space. So
yeah, that's really clear in the training manual. And there's actually, I think Melinda has put some really nice pictures in there to help with that. I'm gonna pull it up real quick here. It's a good question.
Well, it is a good question. And I think the reason it comes up is because in the past, way past, I mean, it used to be if you open the chest, that counted. And that's not how it is anymore. So it's in entry into a space. So Donna, the answer would be no, it would not, because we did not go into the pericardial space.
Okay. Next question, thank you. Next question is from Tiffany. Sequence 2290, appropriate antibiotic discontinuation. If the antibiotic was not administered outside the OR after surgery, would this still be counted as appropriate discontinuation, as technically it was DC'd within 48 hours of surgery?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
It was DC'd. It was DC'd within 48 hours. It's appropriately DC'd.
Okay, here's another one. And I think we've talked about, this is one of those where it gets a little tricky, right? It says a patient was bradycardic preoperatively. The cardiologist, EP, physicians, CTS physicians all said the patient might require a PPM depending on the outcome of surgery. The patient did require the PPM postoperatively. Is this planned or not planned?
Well, in that situation, I have to look at I have to look at several documents. I need to look at the pre-op consult. I need to look at the notes surrounding why the pacemaker went in. So maybe he was bradycardic pre-op, but maybe post-op he went into heart block or in and out of heart block. I mean, that's kind of one you really have to, if there's really a new rhythm disturbance, because I mean, you can be bradycardic for a lot of reasons, but post-op, if generally speaking, people who need pacemakers post-op that weren't planned pre-op probably have some sort of AV block or sick sinus that's going on. And
in addition, they're not just bradycardic.
Yeah, they're not just bradycardic. So those kind of cases we kind of look at individually.
Yeah, and it goes along. Sheena then asks the other one if the pre-op note states possible return to OR for blank and then end up not needing to do blank. I think that's the same thing, as it would need to be reviewed, and you'd have
it has to be reviewed because
Because we could say, oh, probable patient at high risk for stroke. Like
Or high risk for bleeding post-op. I mean,
Yeah.
so we
We
got to
just
look at
gotta
those.
review them. Yeah, hybrid events are not counted as re-up. That's right. Hybrid events, if they are planned before the patient leaves the OR, if they're in the consult preoperatively, or if they're in the operative notes, they are not counted as reoperations. For polling question 2, what about unplanned extra procedures done during the index procedure?
Well,
So-
we're not really talking about that, Teresa, but I will answer that question. The presentation had to do with the post-op events because people were getting hung up on that, but unplanned extra procedures during the index procedure. What I look at here is I look at consents, notes, consults, like, is it on the consent that they're going to do say cabbage and possible MVR? Okay, well, if they do a cabbage and MVR, in my mind, that's planned because it's on the consent. Or, if they get in there and they find something that they don't know exists pre-op, such as they get in there and they just consented them for a cabbage, they get in there and they see that the patient has a lot of valve regurgitation and they decide to repair the valve. Well, that's unplanned due to anatomy at that point.
That's right. What if during the surgery they realize they can't bypass the artery? In the op note, they planned to take the patient to cath lab for PCI. Then is this a planned event?
Yes, that's a planned event because it happened before they ended the index procedure. They said, oh, we can't bypass this artery. We're going to have to do a PCI on it. So it's a planned event and would not count as a post-op event.
That's right. What is a patient consent? What if a patient consents to mitral valve repair replace? The surgeon repairs the valve, but couldn't get patient off bypass due to RV failure. They go ahead and replace the valve in the same surgery and patient can't get off bypass. Would you code both the mitral valve repair planned and mitral valve replace as unsuspected disease or anatomy? So you can't really do that.
Well, I'm saying, yeah, and to me, the surgeon, this is, you can't do that. So I would code it planned because they did plan to do an intervention on the mitral valve. You can't code both.
And it's even if they did a planned repair, even if it was planned repair, possible replace, it's the final procedure that's performed.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's
coded.
This would be planned because he went in there, he planned to do something to this mitral valve, right? He repaired it, but the repair didn't work. So he's going to have to replace it now. So that's a planned event.
Okay, for post-op events, what about a planned non-cardiac reason that was planned prior to the index procedure? For example, patient came in after a fall and had a broken hip. They had to do the cabbage prior to the patient going for his orthopedic surgery. Do I count the ORIF as the hip of the hip, open reduction, internal fixation of the hip as a planned procedure and therefore not count that in the post-op events?
Correct, Diane. This was planned before the cabbage. This patient was going to have orthopedic surgery and they took him post-op. So you don't need to code that as an event because it's not an event. It has, if you coded it as an event, it misrepresents the outcome of the surgery. This was a planned event pre-op.
Next question, what if they, this is related to the patient who was readmitted. This is goes along with the readmission questions. What if they don't have another procedure? So I guess for this example, you could say that the patient came in, had a dissection, transferred them to another facility, which was your facility, and then maybe died or something,
Well, I think we have an answer that says no procedure performed.
That's right. You would still capture the readmit, just not the procedure. And which admission date would you use for the readmit date?
I would use the first one, the patient became inpatient. So if the first inpatient admit date.
Yeah, if they're observation at the first hospital and then get transferred, I don't know if that would happen for this case, but if they were observation at the first hospital, they get transferred to another hospital, it's that first date that they become an inpatient status, right, Melissa?
Yeah, it's when they become an inpatient status.
Okay. I thought the surgery, oh, don't worry, Judy.
Don't worry, Judy. We didn't know it was you that answered that way.
What if the second surgery happens at another hospital?
Well, we're still going to follow it. I don't know. I don't understand that question. What if?
Yeah, if it happens at another hospital and not at your hospital, you don't need to start another DCF for the aorta procedure.
Right. You don't start the DCF, but you still capture the readmit invasive procedure.
Right. It's the other hospital's responsibility to capture that aorta procedure. Polling scenarios questions are super helpful. Thank you. Yeah, we like them too. I also like the scenarios. Okay, so with the readmit procedure, if it was done at a different hospital, you only code the readmit with a procedure, correct?
Yeah, that's all we're following. That's the only thing we're asking you to do is to code the most invasive procedure during the readmit phase, which if the patient is transferred to a higher level of care, then they're still in that acute care phase, that readmission phase. You want to capture the most invasive procedure during that time.
I think people just miss that the original procedure, the patient was transferred back to you from the smaller hospital for the procedure to be done at your for the readmission and the dissection to be managed at your hospital. So your surgeons were on staff at your hospital. For Linda.
Oh yeah, maybe that's what looks like. Some of these questions are like they got. Yeah.
Okay. Next question is a good one. Probably we can clarify on this. Aortic procedures done on readmission in the polling question. If the return to OR happened during initial admission, would you have to code a new DCF for the aortic procedure, or is that only for readmission?
No, you can only have one DCF per episode of care. So, if the return to the OR happened during the initial admission, and that's a post-op event. You can only have one data collection form per episode of care.
Okay, thank you. Direct data submission is fairly new to me. If Melanie or Joe, are you there? I think this is for you. Direct data submission is fairly new. Direct data entry submission is fairly new to me. If I toggled complete on the data sheet, it is then submitted. Then later and prior to the end of submission date, I make a change and toggle complete again. Is it then resubmitted with the correction? Thank you.
It's not. So when we do harvest close, and this is just to keep in mind how that process goes. Once the harvest has a set date, that date at 11:59, that's the close. And then right after at 12 o'clock or 12:01, the following day, we will take the snapshot for that harvest at that time. So if you're making a change and the harvest hasn't closed as yet, so you've made the change, you basically unchecked the complete, you've made the change and then set it back to complete. If the harvest hasn't closed as yet, then those changes are going to be included with the data set that goes to DCRI. But if you make that change after the harvest is closed, then those changes would then be applied in the next harvest.
Perfect. Thank you.
That clears it up.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next question, follow up to one of the questions. One of our patients had episodes of VT pre-op, and there was documentation that an AICD would be considered post-op. AICD was placed post-op, and it is my interpretation that this would not be a post-op event.
Again, Mary, this is going to depend. If this patient had a VTAC arrest, EP saw him, and he's putting an AICD in for secondary prevention, then I would probably say no, this is not a post-op event because the patient came in with a VTAC arrest and EP saw him and he needed an ICD for secondary prevention. But again, it really depends on what was going on pre-op and what happened post-op, and probably not, but I'd have to look at it.
Thank you. Next question. Patient was brought to OR for pericardial window, found a ventricular tear. I coded this as unplanned procedure.
Well, Donna, my first thought is, why was the patient brought to the OR for a pericardial window? He probably had some event that caused bleeding, which is probably that tear. So I'd have to see this, but my gut is that this was a planned procedure. They were taking him to the OR to fix something. I could be wrong. I'm just assuming.
Yeah, probably would need to submit it, and then you're probably gonna ask for the app notes and pre-op consults.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was
I think that this is
tricky one.
probably planned because they were taking him for the pericardial window to fix something, and when they got there, the thing they were going to fix was this tear that was causing the bleeding. But that's just my gut on that.
Yeah, they probably didn't know when they wrote what was really going on with the patient. So they investigated it. Okay, Heidi, in the readmission aortic dissection scenario, was the aortic surgery performed at the transfer facility? No, it was performed back at your facility. So your facility performed the CABG. Patient was discharged, went to the cardiologist, had some back pain, abdominal and back pain. Cardiologist sent him to the nearest hospital, which was not your hospital, to have a CT. The CT showed a type A dissection. Patient was patient stayed at that hospital, got admitted with the intent to transfer back to the facility where the original procedure was performed. So because that patient came back to your hospital, you're still going to capture, the readmission, you're going to capture the readmission procedure on the first data collection form from the CABG. And then you're going to start a new aortic, a new DCF, a new data collection form for the aorta procedure, because that also is being performed at your hospital on a new admission. Hopefully that helps. If the patient had been seen by palliative care on the discharge, do you code that as dead even if the patient is still alive?
I'm not unsure I understand Grace's question. Was this patient discharged to palliative care? Was this patient discharged to hospice? Grace, would you mind sending that in to me? And those are the questions I would like answers for. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. If a patient is readmitted with abdominal pain and has a lap chole, is it recorded as a GI issue or non-related to CV surgery?
I probably would code that as a GI issue. It's your gallbladder, I guess. What do you think, Carol? I mean,
well, let's see what our choices are.
Well, it would either be GI or non-related. And
yeah, and I don't think I would probably code, do we have a OR for non-related?
no, I think it's just other procedure or something like that.
I would probably code other procedure for the readmit primary procedure. And I would code GI related GI issue for the reason. That's what I would do. I think
that's what I would do too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we agree. That's good. To clarify the scenario from earlier, we code the admit date at the hospital for the readmission. For the new DCF, we code our hospital's admit date.
Correct.
Well, hold on. For the admit date, it's going to be the date that the patient becomes inpatient status. So right. It doesn't matter what hospital that happens at, but it's the first time that that patient is inpatient status. So if they're at the hospital that the cardiologist sent them to, they have a CAT scan, that hospital admits them to their as an observation patient, because that's what they do with all their patients. They admit them for observation and then, do whatever. Then that patient stays in observation status at the first hospital. And then that hospital transfers them back to your hospital for the procedure, for the aorta dissection procedure. Your hospital puts them as inpatient status. It's going to be the date that they became an inpatient status. And the new DCF, we do the same things with the admission date, right? We use the date of inpatient status. So it's the date and time that they become an inpatient on the ADT. Okay. Anesthesia finds an RIJ thrombus as they are putting in the central line. After surgery, they Doppler and confirm the thrombus and place the patient on Eliquis. Is this a post-op event? Or it isn't because it was discovered during surgery?
I think it's probably not, because it was discovered in surgery, and which leads me to believe that it's not a post-op event, because it's known they found it and they're treating it post-op.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what they say, what happens in the OR stays in the OR.
That's right. What happens in the OR? Next, Grace is just asking again. Grace, I think you would need to send that into Melinda to have her review it, because it depends if the patient was ordered with if they were discharged on palliative care or discharged with hospice.
Yeah.
That's where the difference, not just that palliative care was seeing the patient, but that's
Right.
how they were discharged. So it makes a difference with that. The readmit reasons get confusing at times, as the surgeons don't want them counted if they are not related to the CV case. Well, you have to count it if it's a readmission, and it doesn't matter if it's related to the CV case. So,
Well, and gallbladder issues can be related to the CV case. So it could most likely probably was related to it.
and then Marina says, thanks, Melinda. That's how I answered the question. Yay.
Okay.
Okay, so we have just a few minutes left, and I can try to do a quick review of the data harvest close. Because I know or we can do it on the 16th, but it's probably more helpful today, so you can work through your harvest close early on. And please make sure you don't wait last minute to get your harvest in and clean up. Work in small pieces. And so here's the IQVIA platform. I'm going to go to my operational reports. Again, the 3 reports I'm going to use for harvest cleanup are the first 3 here. The most important one to me is going to be the participant dashboard, because that's where I'm going to find the information about my mortality, missing and unknown. But also the harvest summary and missing variable report are important. I'll start with the harvest summary report. There's a couple things if I'm gonna look. So remember, this harvest 1, it's gonna be on OR dates through December 31st of 2021. We're looking at 36 months worth of data. And when we review our data for missingness, we're gonna look at the 3 12-month timeframes that make up the 36 months. So I'm going to look at January 1st through December 31st, 2019, January 1st through December 31st, 2020, and January 1st through December 31st, 2021. I'll just go back, and I know that I have already got my data in, and I hope you're paying attention to how I'm entering these dates. So I'm just going to look at the 12-month time frame on December 31st. So I have selected January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019. This will show me the data that I have in the warehouse with these dates. It does not break it down by case type. This is just a list of all the records that you have in for that time frame. it will show you, when you open this report, it's going to show you your outstanding errors and outstanding warnings. The errors are things you probably really need to check into. So if I want to check on that, it was really hard to see, but it was just that small little yellow piece here. If I see a dot, it means that it exists. If I didn't have any outstanding errors, I would only see a blue and a green dot for the warnings and no validation outstanding. So I'm going to start here first and see what these say. Again, remember, you can, if you just left click on this top row where it says message, you can sort these in order. I don't know if that's going to be helpful or not. These are showing warnings. This one is saying that my circular arrest with cerebral perfusion should be entered since circulatory arrest is yes. So I must not have answered the yes or no question. I need to go back into this chart and update it. If you are not a direct data entry user, this link will be a read-only link, but you can still see the record and exactly where that error is laying. If you are a direct data entry user, you can click this link and update it right in the IQVIA platform. For those who are not and who use vendor software, you need to go into your vendor software, make the update, and then re-upload a file that includes this case. So whatever the surgery date is, you'll need to upload another file to IQVIA that includes this after you make the correction. The other one here, post-op repair TEE should be entered since intra-op TEE post-procedure is yes. So I need to make sure that I answer these questions. If they're yes or no questions, I need to go in and answer these. It's really important that we get complete data on these fields that are underneath the error category. The other one is reinfected. The endocarditis culture should be entered since the patient was positive for endocarditis. And then this other one, should I be entered if the RVEED is known? So I must have entered that I knew it, but I never filled in the value. So these errors are ones I definitely need to go in and fix. It will not stop my data from going into analysis, but it's just really unclean data if you don't get these cleaned up, get these entered in, and it causes issues with analysis when we look at the data on a national level. So once I got those cleaned up, I'm going to go to my warnings, and I'm again left click. I'm going to sort it. This is a very long list, so I'm going to make it bigger by double clicking those arrows. I probably don't have a centric jet on any of my echoes, so no surprise that these are missing. No surprise that I have this missing too, because I think there's an error on the data collection form that requires you to enter this even if you just entered in a composite valve graft for the aorta section. And I'm probably just going to check these to make sure. Again, these are just values that are outside of the normal range. Just check for anything that seems wonky. Cross clamp time, I'm probably going to be a little concerned about because it says, and I have quite a few of these. So I'm probably going to check, did I type something wrong? Bypass time is saying something is out of range. The additional ICU hours is saying the same thing. I'm probably going to check these because it's weird. Unless I have a lot of very sick patients, it would be weird that these hours or these times would be out of range. I'm also going to check my valve sizes. All of these I'm going to go and check. The ICU hours, all of those, I will double check to make sure I got them right. I should not have this many. It's weird to have that many out of range. The ranges are really wide. Okay, so I've done all of that. I've cleaned up as much as I can. Everything else I verified is entered correctly. So I'm going to go back over to my reports here, and I'm going to go to the missing variable report. I'm going to look at the same time frame, which was January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019, and apply parameters. This is going to show me if it's a year that had 2 data versions, like in 2020, we had 2 data versions for adult cardiac. It will show me the data version. It's going to show me the surgery year. Everything should say 2019 because I know that that's what I picked in my parameters. Short name, name, missingness, and numerator, denominator, or numerator. It's taking a little bit to load here, but hopefully there it goes. This one you have to click in the first actual row to sort it, but it's nice to sort it because it kind of puts things. I like alphabetical order. Just that's how I read it better. If I see missingness, I'm just going to go through and see if there's anything here that really is surprising that it's missing. The aneurysm etiology, I'm probably going to double check that. Rupture, I'm going to check probably going to check all of these to see what I did. It'd be weird to do a cabbage and not know the type of conduit. Missingness is 0, but it says N is 2 out of 646. So if I just click on the N, it will show me the 2 that are missing conduits. I'm going to go back and fix these. That can't be right. I should know what type of conduit was used for the bypass. Not surprising that I don't have diameter measurements. But I think a lot of this data seems important, so I'm probably just going to go through and double check it all and see what's really missing. If I don't submit PHI, then no surprise that this stuff is all this PHI is missing. There might be some easy ones to clean up here, one-offs. But that's how I would clean that up. And then if I want to go over, and the last thing I'm going to check is my participant dashboard. So I've done my harvest summary report, cleaned up my warnings and errors. I've done my missing variable report and checked for things that need to be cleaned up. And then I'm going to go to the participant dashboard. I'm going to select the same date range, which was January 1st of 2019 through December 31st of 2019. Whoopsie. I guess I just do it there. And now when I get to this participant dashboard, I'm not going to look at everything together. I'm not going to look at all my procedures together. So I'm going to hit the procedure button. I'm not going to select all here. I'm going to go to each of the analyzed categories and look at them separately, because this is how I'm going to determine my missing and unknown for inclusion into the risk model for star rating. The first thing I want to look at when I get here, and see if I can quickly pull it up, but we have remember that for cabbage procedures for the 36-month, the analysis of the 36 months worth of data, I need to have minimum 50 cabbages during that time frame. I don't have a case count for year, so I can check this out a couple different ways. The first is to do the time period for the whole 3-year time period and see what my case count is. Then what happens, so I get my case count, I verify, I know that my site's very busy with cabbages. I don't really need to verify. I know that we're way over 50. If my site is one of those sites that's on the cusp, I'm going to select the 3-year time frame here just to verify my case counts. I know my case is a larger center. I know I'm good. So I'm just going to go back to the isolated cabbages. I'm going to look at all patients. And I'm curious, the reason I'm looking at it at the 12-month period is because of the missingness and unknown. So remember, for Harvest 1, we look at the 3 calendar years. So we look at 2019, 2020, 2021. When we get into Harvest 3 of 2022, you're going to look at the 6 months. You're going to look at 3 12-month periods. The first 12-month period will be the last 6 months of 2019 and the first 6 months of 2020, and so on from there. So just be aware of what what harvest you're looking for, what harvest you're cleaning up for, and the time frames. And I'll try to help you. We'll try to help you with the webinars, so you know what period we're focusing on. It's also available when you go to the, I'm pulling it up on my other screen here. When you go to the harvest schedule, which is on the STS page here, harvest schedule, you'll see that it says includes procedures performed through 12/31/2021. Harvest 2 is 3/31/2022. And I think it probably is going to be helpful if we can add in analysis time frame, so that since we're all of the procedures are now on 36 months, that'll probably be, it'll be helpful and consistent. Okay, I don't know why it's taking so long. Melanie, it's taking a long time. She may have left us. There we go. And I already hit the discharge mortality. So I can see my number of cases. If you're not sure what parameters you selected, just hit the show parameter button up here. It'll show you the cases and your time period that you selected and the procedures that you selected. I'm going to hide these so I have a little bit more screen space. I can see that I have 528 isolated cabbages. The fields I'm most interested in for ensuring that I'm meeting my mortality threshold are going to be the MT discharge, the status at discharge, the 30-day, and the MT OpD. So, which is the mortality, was the patient in an operative mortality. I will be looking at the missing, and if I had any unknown, it would say unknown. So for my site, I have 0 missing here. For 30 days, which is the MT30 stat field, I'm going to be looking at these two, missing and unknown. And I only have one case, 0.2% here. And then the other one was hospital status at hospital discharge, which is right here, status at hospital discharge. And I'll be looking for missing or unknown, and I have 0. So I'm good to go with my cabbage population. I know that I have over 50 cases for the 3-year time frame. And I know for this first 12 months of the 3-year period that my my missing and unknown for my mortality fields is way below the 2%. If I was even close to 2%, like even 1.5, I would be concerned, and I would try really hard to get my percentage below 1% by combining, looking at these and cleaning it up as best as I can. We're working with IQVIA to add in a box here. It won't be available now, but hopefully soon. And it's going to combine the MT-OpD, the status at hospital discharge, and the 30-day mortality status into one field and show you your total missingness and unknown, as kind of an alarm if you're getting close, kind of an alarm to help you recognize that you're getting at risk for missing a star rating. So, okay, so we just have 3 questions. And I think that I'm going to end there because I know we're over about 15 minutes, and that's all I really was going to show you on cleaning up your data. And just remember, you can work with 3 reports, start with the harvest summary, then go to your missing variable, then your dashboard. And the dashboard, work by the time ranges that are going into I don't like this reporting period, so I always use the date range. And then your procedures, work by your isolated procedure. So I would do cabbage first, and then now that I'm coming back, I've checked my cabbage, I'm good there. I'm going to do my isolated aortic valves for that same time period. And again, just check those 3 mortality fields to make sure you're good, and check your volume for the entire 3-year period. So the next question is, I super hope that you can work with IQVIA to change the ranges for pump time, ICU times, valve size. They should be able to run a report for you to get ranges for all patients. So actually we do, and I'm surprised that sites have ranges that are that far out of what our allowable ranges are. if you have the allowable ranges are remember the allowable ranges are it's in the front of the training manual. Hold on. Uh-oh. And if anybody needs to hop off, sorry, we're going over, but I wanted to cover that because I know harvest close is coming up, and I didn't really want to wait until the 16th. So remember, we have acceptable ranges, which include values between the low and high value. The usual range, I'm sorry, these are the acceptable are between the low and high values. If you go outside of these ranges, then that's unacceptable. Your data can't get into the warehouse. Then we have usual lows and usual highs, which you don't get any type of warning on these. If you get into these low or high values, those are things the lab values and pressures and things like that, I wouldn't be super concerned about. But when we get into pump time, ICU times, these ranges are set really wide. So that's why I would be a little bit more concerned about that. And I can show you, I think we put it, I don't know if we put it in, I don't know if we put it in here or not. I guess I could scroll easily through. I don't know that we put the ranges in here. You're going to have to go to the data specs. We started doing it in general thoracic with the upgrade that followed this one.
They're just in the data specs.
Yeah. And we did it in general thoracic. We started adding it into, I guess it's initial ICU time, right?
Yeah.
So I know it's really little. So the hours are really wide. We, these are calculated in hour. Initial ICU hours is from 1 to 300. And that's a pretty wide range for initial ICU stay for our patients. Usually our patients are not in the ICU after maybe day 3 or 4, if they're not already getting discharged home. Our low and high value is super wide, right? All the way up to 5,000 hours. If you're out of this range, I would just double check it. The reason they're here is because this is outside of what is usual. And I have seen sites where the patient might be in the ICU for 30 hours and they accidentally entered 300. So I would just double check those if you're seeing them show up. I would like to know more about the valve sizes. Judy, if you could email me what your concern is with those, because I think we made them smaller in this version by a little bit, but we have pretty wide ranges for valve sizes too. So I'd like to review that too. I agree with Judy. LV dimensions are always highlighted as out of range. Yeah, they are, because on cardiac surgery patients, usually they are not within the normal range. So you're saying for each harvest deadline to recheck the preceding 36 months for each time frame by year, not just by quarter you are submitting. If you've already done that, if you've already gone back and you're sure that your data is clean from the previous 33 months of data, then you don't have to go back and check it. But I'm pretty meticulous and I am a little obsessive, so I would probably always check it just to make sure I didn't accidentally do anything wonky in the last 3 months that I wasn't aware of. So I would always check it, but if you're confident that you did not have any changes, and then I would just worry about the current 3 months. But for missingness, I would always go back and check the 3 12-month periods that make up the analysis. Okay, I guess that's it. So we're going to end here. Melinda, do you have anything to add, or?
No, great job.
Yeah, thanks for staying on, and thanks, Leanne, for staying on with me. Thank you, Danette. I hope you all have a great day and take care, and thank you for joining. I hope you all stay safe too, and the snow doesn't get you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you. Oh, just one more question. Is there any change in single stay unit rule that once you declare yourself a single stay unit, you cannot send a patient to a step down? So you do not declare yourself a single stay unit. You have to get approval from, I think it's CMS, who approves you to be a single stay unit. So it's not just that you say you're a single stay unit. You have to have that, you have to have that certification in place to be considered a single stay unit. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great one. Bye.
Bye.